Vitor, thank you very, very much for joining us for this interview at MEDDICC.com. When I started thinking about interviewing sellers, you're one of the first people I thought about talking to, just because there's going to be a ton of people out there that I get to talk to who have, lots and lots of experience of sales, lots and lots of experience of MEDDICC, but you have a slightly different story. You came into sales a little bit different route than most. So we're going to get into that, and I think it's going to be really, really interesting to touch on. But before we get there, why don't we just start by telling us a bit about yourself, who you are, where you work, and how long you've been in sales?
Absolutely. Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Vitor Vieira. I work at Sprinklr. I've been at Sprinklr for 5 years and 9 or 10 months. I would have to check LinkedIn. And and I've been in sales since March last year, which is like a year and a half. And I'm currently based in Madrid, sort of, because obviously to the circumstance that we're all in, I'm now based in Portugal, where I'm originally from. And in terms of territories and the types of customers I work with, I spend a lot of my time with a few Spanish customers, actually one in the past few months, Portuguese customers, South Africa and Israel. So I'm pretty much the weirdo who has a bit of weirdo markets, but I can live with that.
Yeah, but obviously you've lucked out a little bit there, if you like, working in sunny countries.
That's true. Although if you don't have aircon, they you kind of lose the romanticism a bit. But yeah, I'm really glad with the people that I work with, and I really am, generally am, and the customers I have. I've been in Tel Aviv once. I should have been there a few times because of COVID. We had to cancel. I went to South Africa, and it was really. I I went to Kenya for 24 hours, so that was also interesting. But yeah, I'm really pleased.
That is cool. That is cool. So almost 6 years at Sprinklr.
Yes.
That's, like you say, you've talked about a couple of offices just on this interview, but you must have done five Sprinklr offices, something like that. That's gone through some huge growth.
Yeah, I think I lost count, but in London, where I was based originally, we had 3 or 4 offices, and we moved again, but I was no longer there. Mm-hmm. And then we went to Madrid, and we moved offices as well. But because of, and relating a little bit to my previous role, because of my role before, I used to travel. I was leading actually I was leading the services practice when I joined, and then I was leading a services sales practice for a lot of years. And I used to travel throughout Europe to meet customers, and I would go to offices. And indeed, if we include the offices in Switzerland and Paris and etc., like in Germany, we've probably seen 20 offices. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot. So you touched on it there, that you didn't start at Sprinklr as a sales rep, as someone carrying your own bag. Mm-hmm. How did it start? And like, you've moved into sales.
Yeah. So I had a background in consultancy or B2B platforms or software consultancy and project management for 6 years, and then I was invited to join Clarabridge as an engagement manager. So I was I was sort of a project manager consultant who would manage a couple of people. And then after a year there, I had 3 jobs after I finished uni, and actually it was the only job that I was in that it was less than 6 years. So, and then I was invited by Sprinklr to join as the first services leader in Europe. We had a very small services and implementation practice. I hired a few people, and then there were more leaders joining as well. And then I eventually got specialized in services sales.
Cool. And then I can remember when I was a seller at Sprinklr, and we had this conversation where I can remember where we were. We were in the Farringdon office, and you came over and sat next to me and said, "Hey, Andy, I'm thinking about moving into sales. What do you think?" And I remember us having a really good chat about it. So I know it was something that was on your mind, years ago. But now you've made the transition.
Yeah. Actually, I will correct you there. When we met with another colleague who is let's just say far taller than me, roughly the same height as you.
Taller than me.
We were in Kentish Town in a meeting room. And we were introduced, and then shortly we moved into Farringdon a few months later. And yes, we did have that conversation. I think, I don't know, potentially because I'm, I really try. I mean, it's just, I don't have to try. It's just my natural way of being, in trying to find ways that I can relate to someone. And where I can help or bring value to someone. That just goes in my personal life as well. And normally when I find that, I do that in I would say altruistic manner, even in my personal life. And I think when I have those relationships where I'm working with the entire sales team and I meet customers and I look for ways where I can add value and help that person, or being a customer, or being, a practitioner, or a C-suite, or being an SC, I think normally people tend to, have a degree of respect and trust in you that then, in the business setting just turns into business. So I think it was something that, people thought that would be useful in a sales career, and I started having ideas.
That's great. And I think you touched on something there that I tend to see a lot, which is where people who aren't sellers, who are involved in the sales process, whether it be people like yourself that were helping from like the services side of things, or whether it's like a solution consultant, sales engineer, they have this kind of extra layer of credibility that comes partially because they're not actually a seller, so the customer thinks, well, they've got different motives, but also just because they're just so much there, been there, done it, got the t-shirt, lots of experience. And I think what I've seen work very, very well is where those people can make the move into sales because they carry this credibility with them, this kind of air of confidence in the solution, in the value they provide. So I'm pretty sure from hearing from the success you've been having that you've been doing that too.
I would agree with that. And actually, it's one thing that often annoys me is the let's say the preconceived idea or impression that people have of sellers. And very often when I'm having conversations with customers or prospects, I actually tend to use my background as a way to conquer a little bit more, let's say, or less of that, okay, and more of the I can trust you. Like, I use facts. It is a fact that 5 years and almost 6 years at Sprinklr, and I spent 4.5 managing services, doing a lot of stuff. The relationships that I've built that still exist today of people who are director of something in some large global company who is still there, sometimes doing something else. Mm-hmm. And actually we worked together for 3 years, for 4 years, and there's, and some of them I'm even Facebook friends with.
Yes.
And I'm not saying, there are many Facebook friendships that are really, shallow, but they're really meaningful. Like I actually, I would do pretty much anything, professionally wise to help that person. And they know that. And so the way, that those relationships were built and they have meaning. And I know that if I have to phone them, if I need something, they will also help me. It's a relationship of trust and long-term. I'm a big believer in that. And normally when I tend to say this, I work with this customer for 4.5 years. I just only stopped working with them because I left, and I'm doing another job, but I still speak with those people. And so I think people tend to start changing their minds a bit. And I try to divert from that. I'm like if, I'm here because I think I can bring value. If that's not the case, then that's fine.
Yeah, the Facebook friend thing's interesting to me because there's this misconception in sales where you have to be friends with your customers, or you have to they have to really love you to be able to buy from you. And of course it definitely helps. And if they don't like you, then you definitely have a problem. But I can remember this one time, and actually it's in the book, where I was a deal with Sprinklr, funny enough, and I think it's still a pretty big Sprinklr customer today. You'll probably figure it out as I start to talk about who it was. And we had this issue where they were a big that the company that owned them was a big spread fast, as it were, then customer. It was actually the biggest customer in Europe. And we had this issue where we were like 7 times the price of spread fast, right? And my champion was just saying, look, there's no way we're going to pay more for Sprinklr. We can stick our necks out and go against the group and buy Sprinklr, but we're not going to pay more. And we just went like that. And obviously, using the mantra and force management and all the, command of the message stuff, we'd uncovered, differentiators, required capabilities that only Sprinklr had. So we'd had this real strong case. And I just remember saying to this guy, like, look, we're going back and forth on this. Let's just call it quits, right? You're not going to pay more. There's no way we can get anywhere near their price. So if you're not prepared to pay more, then I'm sorry, but I don't want to waste any more of my time or your time. And I remember in my head at the time thinking, this is it. This deal's gone. It's lost. And it was only then that the customer backtracked. No. We can make this work. And obviously we did, and we came to a really good agreement with that customer. They've done case studies. They're on TV. You can think about who I'm talking about. But the thing that made me think of that, and to your point around Facebook friends, I am now Facebook friends, Instagram friends with that champion, and went on to sell to them again at the next company, and now they're a company of Branch as well, so a customer of Branch as well. So it's like, against all odds at the time, because we were just focused on the mantra, force management, and all that good stuff, we got the deal done.
That's a great story. I think you raise very interesting points, and I think we'll talk about it later. But one of the things that obviously the market shifts a bit, and you have all of these new circumstances. But we actually, on top of that, we now have, and actually almost, I wouldn't say forced, but it's like you need to do these things. We go through, we actually propose to do what we call a preliminary business case, and then go, and then final business case. But the point there is, if the customer gives you the time to do a final business case, then it's like when you're starting the final business case, you almost know that the odds of starting an actual project are a lot higher, because the amount of time that you have to put in, it's a big investment. And so that one, they have to trust you, precisely what you were saying. They have to almost chase you sometimes. It just shifts thing a bit. So when you have these tools, it just transforms things. And then you earn the right, not just to sell to someone and, sell to someone as in to sell, but also to be a part of that person's ecosystem. And that is a beautiful thing.
That is a beautiful thing. And I think what you're talking about there is what I'm seeing more and more of these, these elite sales organizations, elite go-to-market organizations like Sprinklr are doing, where you can bring in some real expertise, consultants, real experience of working with some top brands, and say, look, here's how we help other people. Here's your problem. Let's let's build a business case in the middle of how this is specifically going to help you. But because it is a lot of good stuff, but you can only really do that sustainably and scale in a scalable nature, a company like Sprinklr, if everyone you're talking to in that environment is like super qualified. Because
that is sorry to interrupt you, but that is I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I thought about this a couple of times in the past few months. It's I really admire, no company is perfect, but I really admire where we are and the things that we've done in the past. And particularly that has to do with our management. But there's a few people who really believed in the vision, and there's pain, when you come into a place and there are methodologies, that's fine, but the things that person wants to achieve, in either adding other methodologies or whatever it is, it took years. I mean, it took maybe 2 years, 3 years maybe. And there's so much pain, and on the journey, like, oh, maybe I should call it, and they'll be skepticals, and for me, it's mind-blowing how internally, when you talk about MEDDICC, or you talk about preliminary business case, or you talk about the 3 Ys, or you talk about, whatever, I mean, obviously there are people that aren't as involved, but I will tell you with a high degree of certainty, maybe 80% of the company knows, it's like speaking a new language.
Yeah.
Yes. It's like, oh yeah, I'm speaking Mandarin. How I speak Mandarin, I can speak with you about it,
It's like a universal language of enterprise sales, which I'm seeing as well, because, having these conversations with other people who work in enterprise organizations that have similar, methodologies and frameworks to Sprinklr, it does become a universal language. And that's actually really an interesting thing to talk about, because, you coming into Sprinklr as an enterprise salesperson, that's normally people, land as an enterprise salesperson, and they've done years of being an SDR, BDMs, all these different roles, and then they go to a commercial role. You've leapfrogged that. You've come in, and what I'd love to know is a little bit about how you found MEDDICC. Like, did it click straight away? Was there like a eureka moment where you were like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I get it. I'd love to hear about how you come to go from where you were of working with it as a partner to the sales team, to being part of the sales team, to when did it click?
Yeah, that's interesting. When I was not in the sales team and I was supporting the sales team, for me, examples, I remember with a good colleague of ours from the Nordics, we were traveling there to see an airline in Norway. And I remember we landed, and we landed at 7 a.m. local. So it was, let's just say it was an early start. And I was, we're talking about things, and we had a few hours to prep. And I was saying, yeah, I read their annual report and all these, and these metrics and what to achieve. And it was like, you read it? Yeah, of course I read it. Because I read the RFP, and then I went to the annual report, and I was curious about why does this make sense? And so I didn't know, but at the time I was talking about metrics.
Right. Yes.
Because I felt important. And I as part of my university degree and some of my experience before, I studied business. So for me, really, reading an annual report, and not that I'm a finance, like I look at a balance sheet and I know everything, but I can sort of interpret it. And so that is, without knowing, I was sort of getting there. And dare I say that potentially in the first few years, some of the methodologies were not widely adopted. Some people would adopt some things, some people would adopt other things. And hence the sinking in all of it all the time, it wasn't like, again, a new language, right? So I would have a particular conversation with you and with that colleague of ours, but so many other colleagues would have no idea, and so then coming into sales and leapfrogging the sort of track, the first few months, it was a bit getting my head around things, and I had to give priority potentially to some of the things. But the past several months, when I had to, create territory plans, account plans, and not just creating it, but making, them really make sense and being, accurate and being very solid. I then started to do those things, and it took me a while to get used to, as in, all of the tools and thinking, but actually now I can't live without them.
Right.
I will give you an example. I have a Portuguese customer. It's the largest company in Portugal, and they have operations in Brazil, US, and Spain. And my champion there, we were sort of somewhat close, and we have this thing, let's help each other. And there were a couple of leads coming in from Brazil, really high level, and now I find myself, okay, I had the meeting, I was talking about this, but then I'm like, emailing a couple of people that I met in the meeting that were like 10, and I'm like, hey, do you mind if we have a chat? Because I would like to understand this, and that. What do I want? I want metrics. Right. I want a why now. I want a why anything. And I want his view on that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And because now I'm thinking, well, let me think MEDDICC. Okay,
Yeah.
I know who's the economic buyer.
Yeah.
Great. I know the paper process. I
Yeah.
know the decision process because I know some of the things, but for this particular team, I don't have a why now. I don't have a why anything. I don't have metric, and we're early on in the process.
Right.
Like it's not like I should have all of those things now. But for me, it makes sense. I have a call with that guy and I start building that out.
Got it. Yeah.
Because his why now will be different from potentially someone else on the team. Well, I mean, they must align, but and so, and just to finalize, the same thing with you mentioned Deloitte earlier on, and we also in Southern Europe didn't have a super solid partner infrastructure, and because of thankfully the help of local people and I'd like to think my language skills, because I'm Portuguese, so Spanish and etc. We were able to build, and so Deloitte has been bringing me a few
Right.
leads currently, and then we have a call today actually, and we had I can't say, but we probably have hundreds of calls this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
But for this call today, I know what I want. It's not going to be like, oh, what do you? No, it's like, what are the metrics? What's this why now? Why, who's the decision maker? Who's the economic buyer? Like, I know what I need to ask, and that makes sense. So I can't live without.
Love it. You where you're talking about the metrics there and how you mentioned you were early in this deal, but you figured some things actually sometimes sort of focus on a little bit later in the deal, like the paper process, the decision process. But you highlighted, and you could tell by the way you described it, that really early you were realizing that you were short of metrics, and it was like a massive red flag, like a problem for you. And I think that's one of the real beauties of MEDDICC is that without MEDDICC, take MEDDICC out, you might have gone further. You might have, some sellers will just carry on going until they hit the wall, and then they lose the deal, or the customer ghosts them because they haven't figured out earlier on that they need those metrics.
Of course, but it matters for you and it matters for the customer.
Yeah.
Like even yesterday, I was thinking, and I have two customers or prospects in Portugal. One of them were in the, let's say, I mean, it's again because I didn't follow it properly. I mean, we're in the validate part of we're procurement, those kinds of things. And had I done what I'm doing with another customer or prospect in Portugal, which is we're building a preliminary business case.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to do a couple of reviews. We're going to run it by the team and the execs. Mm-hmm. If there's a go, we'll do some interviews. We'll do a final business case, right? And they are bought in the process. Actually, one of the people, the head of digital, and he was a bit by nature, he's very skeptical. He's like, it's actually good that we have someone with experience. He asks, oh, does that have any cost? Will I have to pay for that final business case because you're going to be auditing my product? I'm like, no, that's fine. We're not going to, maybe a consultancy charge you $1 million, but we're not going to do that because I want to understand what role the technology will play in your processes and where it will add more value. And so had I done this with that other customer, I would probably not be stuck. I mean, we're stuck in that stage because of the circumstance, COVID and etc. But I wouldn't have been there because I would have more of the urgency. I would be able to speed up the deal, right? Because it wouldn't be me saying we need to do these things because we did a preliminary case and these things. It would be like, although we have champions, there will be more of them pushing for the deal to happen.
Got it. Yes, agreed. So you talked a lot about metrics then. Which is your favorite part of MEDDICC?
Oh, guess what? It's metrics.
Hey. Well, I think what's interesting about when I talk to people about MEDDICC and we dig into what's their favorite, you can almost relate the favorite letter to the one that's most applicable to how not necessarily how they sell but how they need to sell their solution. And the reason why I think, if I can make a hypothesis of why I think metrics is your favorite, is that Sprinklr's pretty unique in how they approach the problems they approach, right? It's not you're basically going to be going into somebody who probably already has some form of social media software solution and, wider customer service, technology. But the way that Sprinklr solves it is quite unique in that it covers such a wide array of that problem, or those micro siloed problems. And I think that why MEDDICC is probably so useful for you is because you absolutely need it. You absolutely need it because you need to be able to find these gems of value that you can quantify to make, to get the deal done. Whereas, if you're selling for somebody like, like an email service provider, where really it sends emails, and of course there's much more to it now around, CRM and messaging in different channels. But, if you look at the top 5 that are out there, it's basically, well, mine's got a gold button and that one's green, and this one sends twice as fast or something like that. And so those things really come down to different parts of MEDDICC. I think that comes down to really understanding, having there's other things that will be more important. So I think it's not surprising to me that the metrics are at the top of your list.
Yeah, and I would add something else. So maybe it's the fact that I've been at Sprinklr for a long time. And although we had many iterations of I know what it does. Okay, I don't know all of the buttons I have to click to, but if I have to do some light configuration, I know how to do it. And I know the product, and if I have to sort of give you a high-level view of it, and irrespective of what level of the organization you're, I can relate it to your problems or your day-to-day. And so if I know metrics, if I know how much by when, like I want to reduce the number of inbound calls by X% by whatever, because they cost me X, and if I know that, then we can easily we can easily agree on, why do I want to do anything? Why do I want to do it now? And then I can think of other things in the platform that will help you. A good example is one of those Portuguese customers I mentioned. And actually, I'm working in a very large deal in South Africa, precisely because we're talking about one thing. And then I was like, oh, why do you want to do it? Oh, because of whatever. Okay, cool. And how much? Oh, cool. Yeah. How much? Yeah. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Have you thought? And then other projects. Oh yeah, we actually have this Portuguese customer. Yeah, we've actually been doing a lot of proof of concept for the past 3 years with multiple companies. And actually, I will tell you, we don't even know where we stand on that point. And so if you can do this and you can do that and that, obviously it's interesting for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think if I know the metrics and the whys, the why behind, then I can think of, I mean, it goes back, maybe now that I'm speaking about it, it goes back to, I am wired to try to find a way that I can, that I can help you. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's a bit of a romantic idea, but I really do think that.
Yeah, I think that is an attribute of successful enterprise sellers. I think if you've got that, because whether it be from a position of wanting to get to those outcomes that you're trying to get to, whether it's just inherently part of your personality, whatever it is, if you're approaching your deals with the mindset of, I want to bring value, then chances are you're going to bring value, and that's it's going to be hard not to, almost, especially if you've got a good solution behind you and a good company backing it. So that's super interesting. We one quick question, we talked a lot about it, but I just wanted to check. MEDDICC, 1D, 2Ds, 2Cs?
MEDDICC.
With 2Ds and 2Cs?
Yes.
And it's decision criteria, decision process.
Correct.
Champion, competitor.
Yes, implicated pain.
Implicated pain. Good. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. You've got all kinds of different variations.
Yeah.
That's good. Cool. Well, Vitor, we are right up on.
Just out of curiosity, what does you mentioned MEDDICC with 2Ds, but what do people take out?
Oh, well, this is a can of worms. So you obviously got the initial, back in the PTC days when it initially came out from Dick Dunkel, who we obviously used to work with at Sprinklr, and Jack Napoli, who created MEDDICC. you had two Ds and one C. So you just had champion, no competitor. And then as it's evolved, it went on to include the second C for competitor. And then the second evolution had, as you know, the paper process. A lot of organizations still have a paper process, even if they don't have the P in the acronym. They just roll it into the decision process. But I've seen all sorts. I've seen people put the P to be for partners. I've seen people put a C for compelling event. In the way that I implement MEDDICC, I put an R on the end as well for risks, because I like to call out the risks. If there's any risks in the deal, let's get them front and center, and let's keep an eye on them. So yeah, you could have MEDDICC.
You could call it MEDDICC.
Yeah. That's probably not a good idea. That might set off some sort of internal. Yeah.
I'm not a native English speaker, so I think I'm excused.
You can get away with that. That's brilliant. I think, as they would say on the British or the old British version of the show Top Gear, and on that bombshell, we should wrap it up there. But thank you, Vitor. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for being so open and sharing so much great insight with me.
Absolutely.
And the audience.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you for your time.